welcome to Driving the Human Day 2.
Day 2, live at Radialsystem in Berlin, but also on www.drivingthehuman.com.
Exactly, you got that right, for you watching at home. Now, we are here among 21 visionary minds and more, including a group of international experts. Also, you're probably visionary minds too. In fact, we're all visionary minds.
In our ways.
We're among 21 people's visionary work as well.
But this is, for starters, James Bridle.
Exactly. This is Matylda Krzykowski, the Matylda Krzykowski.
And we're here because we are the curators of atmosphere, leading you through these different ideas and proposals, but we're also here to explore these ideas with you together, because we also only arrived 2 days, and for us it's an exciting journey for these eco-social proposals for an eco-social renewal.
Exactly. There is a world of immersive experiences and interactive installations here in Berlin. As there was yesterday, there is today, and there shall be tomorrow. There are readings, there are screenings, there are performances, and each are proposing avenues to make sense of some of the most pressing issues of our time.
Pressing issues. And each of his visionary minds have come here. You have to imagine, 21 projects, 21 people from 21 countries, to present their ideas and speak about their visions together here with us.
Yeah, togetherness is the thing, no? Together, whether you're at home or whether you're here with us, we're all here to be engaged and open-minded and probably be provoked by things that we never thought we would be.
And most importantly, also to look at things, because it's about, the things that these people developed into something visible, something tangible, something that we will discuss together.
Exactly. Now, if you're at home, we have a Telegram channel, t.me/drivingthehuman, camera just changed. If you're in the room, there is also a Telegram channel. There's discussion happening on there. You can ask questions, and if we have time, we'll get round to that later in the evening.
But maybe let's start already with the first program point of today. Yes. We will have a screening of a film that takes us to Mars. Have you been to Mars? Anyone of you been to Mars?
Hands up, you've been to Mars.
So we're going to see Planetary Personhood by Nonhuman Nonsense.
Planetary Personhood, a universal declaration of Martian rights. Planetary Personhood proposes radical space decolonization to explore ways of not destroying another planet. The project suggests personhood for the planet Mars and considers the possibility of solidarity with the entities already there, the stars. As scientists continue to search for microscopic forms of life, or even fossilized traces of it, Planetary Personhood takes the opposite approach, extending compassion and respect beyond the life-non-life boundary. Planetary Personhood urges the declaration of the entire planet Mars as a legal and ontological person. Mars will be owned by Mars, and any decisions regarding Martian matters, such as mining or terraformation, will ultimately be taken by Mars, a new legal entity with rights protected in a Martian constitution. In an era where both corporations and volcanoes have become legal persons, Mars would be represented by a group of guardians from various philosophies and indigenous groups on Earth, many of which enable a deeply symbiotic and respectful bond to the land. On Mars, everyone and everything is born a Martian, and all Martians are born free and equal in dignity and rights. On collision course with earthly institutions, the project seeks citizenship for a Martian meteorite residing on Earth. Allen Hills 84001, blasted off the Martian surface by the impact of another meteor 17 million years ago, roamed the solar system and finally landed on the international continent of Antarctica 13,000 years ago. After first encounter with humans in 1984, Alan was carefully studied by scientists, leading to the announcement that he contained evidence of life on Mars.
Today, Rock 84001 speaks to us across all those billions of years and millions of miles. It speaks of the possibility of life. We will continue to listen closely to what it has to say.
It was later decided that it was unclear what Alan was saying about life. When considering human settlement on Mars, the planet is often seen as an empty place, a blank canvas, void of life, and therefore empty of agency and inherent value. Mars is the ultimate desert, our new terra nullius, where humankind can once again carelessly manipulate the world to our liking. Mars is the dream world where the narrative of human domination is running wild and free. Planetary Personhood supports the positive aspects of space exploration, such as curiosity, humbleness, and reverence for mystery, while it prevents our boldness from sliding into recklessness. Cherishing Martian geodiversity and employing a strategic anthropomorphism could lead us to a new relationship with the land, and while this practice doesn't provide immediate answers, it frames a certain Martian mindset. What forms of presences and absences are supported and constructed by particular activities? Who is allowed to maintain their current form? Can respecting Martian ways of being move us to reconcile with Earthlings?
It is well worth contemplating how we reached this moment of discovery. More than 4 billion years ago, this piece of rock was formed as a part of the original crust of Mars. After billions of years, it broke from the surface and began a 16 million year journey through space that would end here on Earth. It arrived in a meteor shower 13,000 years ago, and in 1984, an American scientist on an annual U.S. government mission to search for meteors on Antarctica picked it up and took it to be studied. Appropriately, it was the first rock to be picked up that year, rock number 84001. Today, rock 84001 speaks to us across all those billions of years and millions of miles. It speaks of the possibility of life. If this discovery is confirmed, it will surely be one of the most stunning insights into our universe that science has ever uncovered. Its implications are as far-reaching and awe-inspiring as can be imagined. Even as it promises answers to some of our oldest questions, it poses still others even more fundamental. We will continue to listen closely to what it has to say as we continue the search for answers and for knowledge that is as old as humanity itself, but essential to our people's future. Thank you.
This first meeting of the Mars Guardian Council, in accordance with paragraph 24C of the Guardian Rules of Procedure, I will act as an interpreter the will and intention of Martian meteorite Alan Hills 84001. I thereby kindly request Alan to begin your message. Formed by molten lava. It was not my birth. Was already other forms. Volcano, dust, stars. Not moving between realms of being and non-being. How can something go from being nothing to be something? There has never been a time that I didn't exist. You are all rocks, afraid of dying. I think you already know what's out there. You will miss much of it. That is the end of the transmission. Thank you.
We're finished? It's yours.
Now my pleasure to welcome James Bridle to the stage as he presents his project Server Farm, a project that envisions the radical idea to produce a computer out of plants. Applause.
Hello. Hi. I'm James. It's very nice to see you all. Thank you very much for coming. Yeah, I'm going to talk for a little while about an idea called Server Farm, which is my contribution to this gathering. Yeah, could I have my slides, please? Thanks. Server Farm, what are we talking about here? We're talking about a computer made out of plants, but I should start by explaining a bit about where this idea comes from and what's it in response to. These are a couple of graphs that I think about a lot. You may recognize either or both of them. On the left is the graph of, or a graph of Moore's law, formulated by Gordon Moore of Intel back in the 1960s, which then was a prediction where he said that the power of computers would double every couple of years. He thought it would last maybe 10 years. It's lasted ever since. And year on year, we've increased the powers of computation. And every time it looks like this isn't going to work anymore, we figure out some new hack to make computers more and more powerful. It's one of those kind of up and to the right graphs I feel like I see everywhere these days. But it also describes the kind of contemporary world in which we find ourselves in, one in which the expectation is in the future there will always be more of what we need. And on the right is the Keeling curve, the graph of CO2 concentration in the atmosphere measured at Mauna Loa on Hawaii, also since the 1960s, maybe earlier 1950s. Also a curve that goes up and to the right, with slightly less exciting consequences, as we are all increasingly aware. And for me, these two graphs are deeply, deeply interrelated in super, super important ways. Computation is a huge contributor, like physically and literally, to a warming planet. The way in which we build computers is incredibly destructive, it turns out, both in terms of the minerals that are extracted, the earth that is destroyed and despoiled to pull those chemicals and components out of, the waste that is produced as a result, and also all of the heating and cooling and raw CO2 that are produced. The internet alone, not all the devices connected to it, but just the kind of server farms and all the stuff you don't see, the cloud, essentially, has a carbon footprint that's a little bit larger than the entire airline industry. Watching one YouTube video creates a heating impact from the servers that video is streaming from, equivalent to running a refrigerator for a month. So the whole thing is screwed, basically. We've fucked up quite badly, and we need to remedy that. But the other effect for me of computation is not just kind of physical, it's also cognitive in really important ways. As we've kind of surrounded the globe in computation in this way, it's radically shaped the ways in which we think. We've come to think essentially like computers. Everything we do is kind of put through this narrow funnel of what is computable. And the only things we can think about are things that are computable. Everything else gets kind of erased or bullied into these little kind of database boxes, becomes unthinkable because it is not computable. And so we need to think of other ways to think. We need to think of ways to think. Think at the scale of computers. Think with that kind of power and intelligence and creativity, but not to the narrow funnels of the machines that we've created thus far. So how do we do that? How do we even start to think about doing that? Changing both the kind of material basis of computation and the material basis of thinking itself, and also the way in which we think. For me, the answer to that is by turning away from purely digital, purely machinic apparatus, and turning away from all of the, or turning back towards the Earth that has been ignored for so long in those equations. And also by looking for collaborators already around us on the Earth who might also be able to help us do it, because we're clearly not doing a very good job of it ourselves. As an example of the kind of thing I'm talking about, and the kind of collaborator that's kind of might be interesting to think about in this regard, consider the slime mold. If you haven't met a slime mold, they're amazing. They're very weird, somewhere between fungi and algae. No one's quite sure what they are. This whole thing is actually a single cell, shaped in this weird way, that grows by kind of pushing out little pseudopoda, filling space, exploring, eating things. They live in the woods and forests. They've also become kind of a favorite of scientists in recent years because they do weird stuff like this. This is a now quite famous experiment from 2010 in which scientists laid out oat flakes, which Physarum, this particular slime mold, really likes to eat. They laid them out in the shape of the Tokyo Metro. And they watched as over 24 hours, the slime mold recreated almost exactly the transport network of the Tokyo metropolitan area that had taken Tokyo metropolitan engineers something like 100 years to create. And this isn't just like some little like connect the dots exercise. This model includes like areas that represent lakes and mountains. It includes trade-offs between like the viability of different routes, the popularity of different points. This is a very, very smart slime mold. But its abilities go beyond just simple mapping. It does some other really interesting stuff, for which I'll just explain quickly why this is really interesting. There's a problem in computer science, in mathematics, called the traveling salesman problem. It's a generalization of something called the Bridges of Königsberg problem, which was proposed by Leonard Euler in 1763. And the idea is that if you are a traveling salesperson, we should make that gender neutral from now on, you have a number of places to visit, and you have to visit each of them once, and only once, in the most efficient way possible. Logistics companies and very many others spend literally millions and millions of dollars on kind of attacking this problem. And you can imagine, obviously, that there's multiple solutions, and some are better than others, and it can take a while to find them. Find them you may do. But what's interesting about this problem is that if you add one more city, the problem becomes exponentially harder. I.e., the time it takes to solve it for more cities doesn't look like a line like that. It's a line that goes like that, right? And so as you add more cities, the problem becomes computationally intractable, right? Computers hate exponential problems because they can take literally forever to solve, or at least as longer than until we get the heat death of the universe. So the traveling salesman is a problem. Turns out, not for slime molds. Slime molds can solve the traveling salesman problem in linear time, the flat line. We don't really know how they do it, but they're better at doing it than the most powerful supercomputers that humanity has been capable of constructing. There's many, many, many things like this that we're just starting to discover in the world around us, that have been here all along, that preceded us, and are capable of things that we can't even begin to imagine. The traveling salesman is a neat trick for a slime mold, but it's also the only trick that we notice because of the way that we already think. We know these creatures, these beings, can do many, many other things, and we're only just figuring out how to frame the questions to ask them. There's really interesting interplays between the kind of organic world and the technological world at play here. One thing that actually features in several of the other projects here, and you may have kind of heard more and more about recently, is what we're starting to understand as these kind of underground networks between plants and fungi, what are called mycelial networks or mycorrhizal networks, that run beneath the ground through healthy soils and connect plants, including plants of different species, into not just kind of nutrient networks, although these networks do pass kind of food and other needs between plants in very interesting ways. They're also information networks. They're also signaling pathways. So plants that, for example, that are under attack by a particular type of bug might pass that information down through these mycorrhizal networks, through the bodies of a whole other species, through another family of creatures, the fungi, receive it elsewhere, and those trees can then act on that information. So suddenly we're just starting to perceive this kind of extraordinary communication that, once again, has been going on under our feet all the time, and we didn't even know about. But one really extraordinary thing about this is that it took us making our own networks to notice, right? They've been there all along, but it was only with the development of the internet that we developed certain types of mathematics, particularly a thing called network theory. There was a type of mathematics that became necessary because we needed to understand this insane human. This is a picture of the internet, by the way. These incredibly complex networks that humans were had built. It was only when we developed this theory, this network theory, to understand how the internet worked, that people who'd been looking at mycelial and mycorrhizal networks started to realize that these networks behaved in the same way. Because when we're building technologies, we're not just building stuff that works, we're also building metaphors and ways of understanding the world. Like I said about the way in which computation has kind of shaped the way that we think in ways that don't appear too helpful, it can also shape our work in other ways. I think one of the most interesting things that potentially may happen now, for example, is the fact that we're starting to realize that artificial intelligence is something radically different to human intelligence. I'm not really that interested in AI, per se. It may do something interesting at some point. It hasn't really yet. But what it does tell us is that other forms of intelligence are possible, right? It's not just human intelligence. Multiple forms of intelligence are possible. Human intelligence, machine intelligence, and the intelligences of everything else. Perhaps AI is here just to tell us that, hey, start looking around and start noticing how intelligent everything else is. Here's another kind of weird plant I'm fascinated by. This is a hyperaccumulator. This type of imaging shows you the concentration of metals in the plant. Because hyperaccumulators are plants that have evolved to grow specifically in very metal-rich soils. So where there's a lot of metal in the soil, which is bad for most plants, essentially toxic to plants, certain kinds of plants have evolved to grow very well in these soils. And the way they do this is they actually literally kind of suck the metal out of the soil and store it in their leaves. And therefore, they actually kind of clean the soil. A lot of the knowledge about these plants actually comes from kind of research by mining companies, with the idea they might plant these on old mines to like clean the soil. But there's a growing research interest in how they might also essentially be farmed in order to grow metal, that you could plant these on naturally occurring metal soils, grow the plants, harvest them like any other crop, and in this case, kind of then burn them. You could use that energy for biomass and get the metal back out of them. This is one such plot. This is some researchers from the University of Thessaloniki I'm working with in northern Greece, and these are fields of hyperaccumulators. They're testing there on what are quite rare, naturally nickel-rich soils. They're testing various endemic flowers, that is, plants that only grow within quite a small area, Alyssa morale, Bormorella tymphea, and Bormorella emerginata. Tymphea is really interesting. It's not very beautiful, but it only grows within about 10 kilometers of Mount Tymphi, which is this is in Epirus in northern Greece. Like, this plant has evolved in this very specific place, and we had to go and ask it what it knew about the place in order to discover discover the things that we were looking for under the soil. Right? It's the best performing of all these plants because it's the most local, and it is the one that has the most local knowledge. It's something very extraordinary in that realization that many of the things that we're looking for, and have caused so much damage by trying to extract, they've been sitting there all along, and they're just waiting for us to shut up and pay attention. And it's also worth emphasizing, sorry, at this point, if I haven't been clear about this, because this is the first real photograph of something I've shown. The server farm is going to be real. This isn't some weird speculation. These aren't CGI images or anything. I'm going to build this thing. It's probably going to take 20 plus years, but I mean it. We're also just beginning to learn how to communicate with plants, right? To actually understand how they're thinking and feeling about their environment, the situation they find themselves in, and what's going on. There was a big fuss earlier this year, last year, all these headlines about how spinach had learned to use email. I don't know if anyone saw this. What actually happened is that researchers at MIT had engineered kind of carbon nanofibers into the leaves, which fluoresced in the presence of certain chemicals within the leaves, and then they could use infrared cameras to read that information back out. And there's kind of many cool applications of this. For example, you can use it to kind of detect pollutants or poisons in the soil, or something leaching from a landmine, or basically, it turns out plants are better analytic chemists than we are. And again, we kind of need to listen to them when they're trying to tell us this stuff. They can speak to us about what they know. But I do kind of feel, while I'm just putting all of these things out there, that might be kind of getting ahead of ourselves, because plants already express themselves pretty clearly, as visible in these satellite images of tulip plantations in the Netherlands. Perhaps rather than performing, because there's always a temptation when you start talking about these technological things to assume this is all some kind of cybergenetic engineering thing. But perhaps instead of performing those kind of complex operations on the plants, we just need to pay attention to the languages that they're speaking already, to kind of listen and understand them. And think of the server farm perhaps as being less of a kind of genetic engineering laboratory for things like that, but something that's a little bit more like a flower garden. And in relationship, or in similarity, the idea of farming being something that's not super industrial as we've come to know it, but something that involves care and tenderness and attention and time. But already we can start to imagine kind of what this computer, what this server farm might look like just from the examples that I've sort of shared already. This, for example, is a very simple diagram of basically all contemporary computers. This is the standard architecture of pretty much every single computer you will ever meet, from a laptop to a phone to an ATM to an aeroplane. It's input, it's processing, exchanging with memory, and then it's something coming out. And that's basically the architecture of computation as we've designed it. And we may want to change it, but even if we don't, you could always imagine how as I say, just from the things I already mentioned, something really interesting could be rigged up here. From chemical-producing plants like the hyperaccumulators feeding into something like a slime mold, providing it with the kind of input of different chemicals that would affect its behavior, less changing those calculations or beginning to think of, like, essentially program those calculations. Those calculations, I say that we don't even really fully understand what the slime mods can do, but we already know they can do things that our normal computers can't. Storage taking place in kind of mycelial networks, networks that also may allow for communication between multiple server farms, who even knows? And then the outcome of those calculations becoming visible through various forms of plant signaling, whether it's super advanced IR imaging or whether it's, as I said, just a field of flowers. And like any computer, by altering the input or changing the structure of the architecture and programming, we could change the output. We can change the questions, and we can think about new answers. Which does make it sound a bit dry. And so it's important to emphasize that what I'm talking about here isn't really a machine. It's an ecosystem. It's one in which the component comrades of the server farm exist alongside us, other animals, a much broader environment. It's not a deterministic machine, an automatic machine, in the way that we understand computers to be at the moment. It's an assemblage of riotous beings. It's a whole bunch of critters trying to get along and trying to think through things together, something that perhaps we might rather term like a conference or a colloquy rather than a farm per se. But I like the farm metaphor, if, as I say, it's not necessarily an image of the kind of industrial agriculture which has become dominant, but perhaps looks something a little bit more like this. This is the Bec Hellouin farm in Normandy, which is an extraordinary agricultural establishment of some 30 years now, which has shown how the principles of permaculture, sustainability, respect for the earth, regeneration, can exceed and replace the capabilities of industrial agriculture. We're still learning how to farm and how not to do so destructively. If we can relearn agriculture, a technology and a science thousands and thousands of years old, we can certainly relearn how to do computers. Or perhaps the server farm will look more like this, like the Garden of Cosmic Speculation, designed by Charles Jenks, a 30-acre formal garden which illustrates in its design the principles of mathematics or particle physics. That would be cool, but I don't just want to illustrate these things, I want to actually do them. Perhaps the server farm will look a bit more like Agnes Dean's wheat field, grown for a single season on 2 acres of lower Manhattan in the early 1980s before it was replaced by skyscrapers. Something perhaps a little more temporary than farms that we're used to. Because one of the interesting things about working with plants and other critters is they have their own desires, they have their own needs, and they have their own places they want to be. And perhaps all the component comrades of this farm won't necessarily all want to be together, and we'll have to work out some more kind of distributed structure. But as we've learned from contemporary computation, distribution is powerful and allows us to do things that we weren't otherwise able to do. Or perhaps it'll be more like Ant Farm's idea of a dolphin embassy, one of my favorite things in the world, a proposal from 1973 which envisioned humans living on this kind of strange sci-fi environment on the open seas, better to acclimatize themselves with other species. And the reason I'm showing these images is because I want to impress about this being a real thing, even though it's not real yet. And the reason I showed the dolphin embassy, though it was never realized, God, I want it to be realized, because it was a project that emphasized the need for humans to dehumanize themselves and decenter their humanity and to better understand the conditions of and therefore communicate with other beings, to understand them as colleagues and compatriots and comrades rather than as subjects or things to be dominated, livestock, food, any of these other things. Because amongst all the other things server wants to be, server farm must be, it needs to be a place where humans, non-humans, machines, and all kinds of others meet as equals. This is critical. Because any technological, ecological project at any scale is first and foremost a political one. And this too is a political project. What the server farm seeks to calculate, I don't know yet. I just know we face a bunch of really big problems that we don't even know really how to formulate the questions for, that we don't even know what are the questions we need to ask or how to process them to address our greatest global problems of the present. I'm pretty sure that the way we've gone about it so far isn't working, but I'm pretty sure the world is always waiting for us to ask the right questions and is there waiting to provide some of those answers. It requires work from us and a lot of listening. But whatever those questions are, whatever those are answered, my belief, my idea is that server farm could be an interesting place to do that. A collective farm, critically, where what's nurtured and grown isn't just sustenance, but actual knowledge, and that knowledge is returned back to the earth where it belongs in order to grow and develop a more sustainable, just, equal, and frankly survivable future. Thank you very much. Thanks very much.
I want to ask you to stay here and Akwasi, I ask you to join us and a warm applause for them, please. And we will have a fourth artist on Zoom. On the left, on the screen soon, Iris. My name is Kay Meseberg. I'm at Arte, and I work there as head of mission innovation. So I'm caring about the after tomorrow of what you hopefully watch on a regular basis on your screens. I'm very happy to moderate this panel today, since here are really a lot of interesting projects and questions related to the after tomorrow. We had a great presentation of James. I'm really fascinated by your idea. I would like to start with you, just to ask you first who you are and what is your work dedicated to in general.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm James again. I'm a writer and artist, and for the last kind of 10 years or so, I've mostly been concerned with technology. And I'm interested in the way in which technology shapes and affects politics and society. Oh, mic's off, isn't it? Can people hear me at the back or the same? Not a little bit.
Maybe the microphone of Akwasi.
Okay.
No,
there we go. Thank you. I've been interested for a long time in the way technology shapes society, politics, daily life, everything else. And I also used to like it more. And unfortunately, it's become harder and harder not to concentrate on the dangerous effects of it in society. And so increasingly my work is concerned with alternatives and also, like most of us, I imagine, concerned about perhaps we should be paying more attention to the environment and the broader context in which we live. And so I've been trying to bring what I know about computation and technology to bear on some of those questions. It's just the lens that I happen to look through, but I keep finding really interesting reasons for doing so.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Inspiring. Next one, Akwasi. When I read first about your project, I was remembered on a project Arte did something like 8 or 9 years ago. We put, the team of journalists put sensors, GPS sensors, into old TV sets which were staying around the streets in Berlin and Hamburg and Germany. And then they tracked, because they wanted to find out where they are heading to, where they are finishing up at the end of the day, when they're not working anymore. And so they found out about huge electronic trash dumps in Africa. And now you're coming with your project. Can you just summarize a bit, like what brought you here, what your work is, and then we have a little video about your work.
Sure. Yeah. Hello, everyone, once again. Yes. So my name is Akwasi Afrane Bediako, and I'm an artist from Ghana. So my work actually is an amplification. Through my artistic practice, I try to amplify the relationship, the prosthetic relationship that humans form with electronic gadgets. Yeah, so I try to do this by like mutating the I focus on the word discarded gadgets because the trash is different from the electronic gadgets because they don't work. I prefer ones that work, but people no longer have use for them. Yeah, so it's a way also to like critique our consumption. Yes. So as an artist, I convert them, like I mutate them into these living creatures or living things that you see in my projects, and I call them trons. Yes. So that's a little, I can say for now. So maybe after the video, then I get to say more about it.
Yeah, maybe we can just watch the video together. It should run now. Yes? really, Akwasi, I'm really curious to learn the very idea for that. Like, where did you start to create your work?
Okay, thank you once again. Yeah, so the work we just saw is a setup I did at home. Yeah, so I'm trying to create this kind of a machine city, like, and with the codes, the running grain codes. I'm sure most of us are familiar with the Matrix movie. So it's also borrowing from the idea of the Matrix movie, but instead of the numbers, I use the title of the work, TRONS'R'US. So that's the title you're actually seeing. Yeah, so what fascinates me about the Matrix idea is the idea of sacrifice, what the human sacrifices just so these like machines can live on. Yeah, so I'm actually looking at how by like relating with these machines as like in the term of prosthetics. Yes, so we actually sacrificing something. I mean, from the production to its discardation. It was one of the things that really intrigued me was when I found out that the minerals, the precious minerals used to create these things are actually very costly. And then there is this funny thing about how we always keep complaining about not having enough of these minerals, but somehow, there's always a production going on. I've never heard of a production being stopped because there's never enough, but it's a kind of a paradox for me there, yes. And also the setup was also to create this idea of a paradox where through technology we're becoming more like mechanical, so like there's this kind of a world we are looking up to because we so much depend on these machines. Like this room is full of machines right now, yes. And then we are also discarding like a massive amount of them. Yes, in a way they're actually piling up with our like life essence drawn from us when we discard them. Yes, so it's kind of a paradox I'm trying to play around with right there, yes.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I was just wondering, is there a relation to Toys R Us?
Is there?
Toys R Us, you know, the chain for games for kids, which went bankrupt,
really,
I think.
The title is actually like to draw on the idea that the Trons are representation of the people. So like TRONS'R'US is the direct interpretation as to the Trons you see are actually people you see there, yes.
Okay.
That was what I wanted to ask about, actually. I don't know if you just answered it, but like, are you like, for you, are they like personified? Like, are they alive?
Yeah,
I guess is what I'm asking for.
They're beings, like, and it's imperative that they show or they display signs of life. So like the lights, the movements, and all the sound and everything. It's very, very like calculated to push out that idea. Yes, and also one thing I forgot to mention is for the project is like I'm presenting the Trons like as a white box as opposed to a black box. Yes, so you see a lot of them like open bare. Yeah, to let people like actually like provoke questions and also discussions about our like consumption nature. Because one thing I realized is like with the works, mostly it's been like branded as a recycling project, but it's actually no recycling I'm doing. The machines you see actually I like to call them anti-machine or anti-machines in the sense that they are machines but no machines, because machines are known to like help us do things easier or to like do something for us, but the machines you see there they're not related to that kind of like machine in the sense of helping you do something. It will not help you do anything. It's just there to draw attention to something, like to bring up a discussion or something.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll come back to that
Sure.
For the next question, but first of all, I'll go to Matthew. Same question for you. Just would ask to present yourself a bit, like in the context of your work, and then we will watch a little video.
Yeah, thank you. So hi, I'm Matthew. I'm a visual artist and filmmaker and researcher based in the Netherlands. I guess in the kind of broadest way, I'm interested in shape-shifting historical forces that emerge within modernity and how those become entangled with natural processes and planetary systems. Most recently, this has been explored primarily through moving image works, and there I'm interested not just in what is imaged, but how it's imaged. So the apparatus of image production becomes part of the content, let's say, and this extends also to the presentational context. So I consider cinema as a kind of dream space, a space of world making, a space of prototyping possible futures, both individually, this as a kind of space of encounter with things we may have never been able to encounter directly prior to their emergence, let's say, as an idea, before they are a material reality. And is there something else? That'll do.
Okay.
And
well, we can watch
continue
maybe
from there.
the video about your project, and then we dive into another question. Okay. Let's go for Matthew's video. When I saw the work yesterday and today you did, I was reminded on the National Library in Paris, one of the most impressive buildings for me because they combine architecture and the whole forest, which is in the courtyard of this building. And somehow I was reminded on that, but also moved on into your work. What was for you let's say the basic idea, the nucleus of this work, and to bring it together with Driving the Human?
Well, for me, I think of it more of as a starting point than as a, how do I say, a product or it's beginning to delineate the zone of interest of this relation of both kind of emergence and convergence of artificial intelligence and climate change in the general way. And I think I had already in the back of my mind that trying to translate between this let's say the kind of practical side of the research that is done with both climate science and artificial intelligence into something that's more accessible as an experiential encounter. Something that is not based in language, something that is not necessarily, how do I say, trying to present data to be interpreted, but something that can evoke a kind of reflective response and, in a way, provoke questions rather than, give an answer. So invite new pathways for the imagination. This is sort of the ambition, let's say. Yeah.
Once David Attenborough said that climate change is foremost a communication problem, to translate the thing that everybody, or a lot of researchers know, into action and into process in society. Which role can AI maybe play in that if you add AI to the question of climate change? Which role can it play? I mean, somehow it's energy consuming algorithms and all that, but on the other hand, it can also, when you think about like green AI and different kind of projects like that, can also help maybe to put an incentive on that. What do you think?
I mean, sure, any of those things. I mean, I think, well, you started to point to issues related, really diverse issues there, from policy to how we produce and consume energy. And so, I mean, there are literally hundreds of ways AI can play a role. And so what I think it's important to say about my general work is that I often or almost always collaborate or am in dialogue with scientific researchers. So for me, the kind of draw off of Driving the Human was the opportunity also to work with some of the partner institutions and to, let's say, not go in alone, because I certainly don't have those answers, but I believe that I can facilitate a process of bringing certain things into a more accessible or encounterable thing. But I definitely wouldn't call it science communication. So that's something to me very different and very specific.
Yeah, well, that's a different deal.
Can I ask the same question that I asked Akwasi before? It's weird. I wasn't expecting it to be the same question. But is the AI alive? I mean that in what I mean is because we're asking how we might perhaps change our relationship to AI particularly to my understanding, is in yours there's both like a use of AI, but also a potential critique of the way it might be employed in kind of climate science, climate communication, or at least a critique in the sense that it is limited if it doesn't involve a kind of aesthetic, non-linguistic component in some way. There's a field that could be expanded there. And one of the ways that I've been thinking about a lot, and I wonder if this resonates in any way, is what I mean by the same question, because is when working with AI, do you, or any of your collaborators, the kind of scientists who work with this stuff, is it pure tool, or is it a collaboration? Is it its own like entity, perhaps, within this relationship? Or might it become one in some way, rather than being kind of purely functional?
I mean, this is kind of the $10 million question, right? That AI kind of puts in the middle of the kind of Enlightenment era philosophy of a privileged human, which of course is a particular kind of human. Is the AI alive, right? This is your basic question.
Yeah, kind of.
I mean,
like the one we all wait to ask, right?
But I think this, I think that what I would say is it depends 100% on how we define what it means to be alive, right? And this is what, like climate change, AI does. It forces a reframing of questions. So, to me, the answer is always contingent on the framing. It might sound a bit of a cop-out. For me personally, is it alive? No. Is it but it does have agency.
So you can have a relationship with it.
Sorry?
So you can have a relation with it.
You can have something like a relationship, yeah. But I think a good bit of that comes down to projection. I do think, at least for me as an artist, one of the marvels of AI is the kind of fecundity it has. It can generate and generate. So in that regard, I see a kind of sort of a strong relationship to what we would normally look to in nature, this kind of source of generating form.
I think Iris can help us with that question. I would like to, Iris, like to ask you to introduce yourself and also to talk a bit about your work, and then we see an extrait of your work in a video afterwards.
Sure, thanks. My name is Iris Chu, and I'm a technologist artist based in Brooklyn, New York. I'm from Qingdao, China. I'm Chinese. This project really started as a self-reflection on my own techno-optimism towards climate change, because I myself is a tech worker, and a lot of times our interpretation of climate change is through a lot of technological solutions. But as James pointed out earlier, all of these technological solutions rely on a global hardware infrastructure that requires constant climate control. So they're actually quite fragile. So especially from the 2020 pandemic and lockdown, I was reflecting a lot on the intersection of this technology and climate change. And I also have a video piece coming up that's about an AI agent processing climate change. So I would say this video is co-created by me and text and image generation algorithms. So maybe we can watch the video first, and I'll hand it back to you all.
Okay, thank you. Let's play the video. So Iris, your project idea, your project has a name. Do AIs dream of climate chaos? Do they?
I would assume that they do, just because it's such a, I guess, global existential threat to their own existence. But I was, I guess, mostly interested in the aspect of the ability of machine learning algorithms to summarize and analyze the data we choose to collectively put down, or I guess as a collective privileged humans, to borrow Matthew's word. I guess in a way, this project is my own attempt to try to grasp the scale and complexity of climate change by using AI as a data analysis tool to tell a story and using AI as a narrative device.
Yesterday you told me some interesting things about the way you worked and how you combined the text, how you found out about the text and the visual aspect. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, so the videos you saw here are, I guess, co-produced by me and different algorithms. And the training data I collected was based on Wikipedia articles on climate change and New York Times news articles. And there was more than 200,000 articles that this algorithm was trained on. So from there, I was asking the algorithm to write its own thinking on climate change on different topics, and as we'll see in the thought bubbles. And then based on those thoughts, the AI was constructing a narrative in the video or like the movie image that you saw.
Mm-hmm. We just started, before we introduce you, a discussion about like what role machines or AI play in the work of you four artists and about the relation between the personal impact and how it is to deal with machines, with physical machines like Akwasi, or with AI, more virtual machines, and the relation to nature. I would like to open up the discussion a bit now and to maybe come back to this point, because I think it's quite interesting today, you know, when you talk about digital art or machine art, somehow you bring up, it's a different relation to than having a pencil or something in your hand and to draw or to write in a typewriter. I would guess. How are your experiences in this kind of work with machines? Maybe we start with Akwasi because you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, you can go. And then we.
Okay. Yes. So for me, it's a really intriguing kind of experience actually, because I started out as a sculptor, and then I later tried to understand technology and how things are with technology. I decided to get in touch with these electronic gadgets to work with them to do projects that bring attention, and then so I had to start getting into the more of electronic aspect of things. Yes, so it's actually interesting in the kind of diversion in terms of more artistic, because most people look at me and they question the idea of are you an artist? So do you think you're an artist or an engineer? Yes, and for me, I've always seen art as a way of communication. So to be able to communicate effectively, you need to find the right language. So in terms of disciplines, I see the other forms of disciplines as a way for people to communicate. So science is a language for me, and engineering and music and all these things. So as an artist, I kind of see these as materials or a way of tools to compose a project to communicate to people. Yeah. So they're supposed to mostly understand based on their relationship with the discipline. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah. It's an interesting point, I would go on to open up and to have a discussion about it, because I think it's really interesting. Maybe Iris, if you.
Yeah, sure. So I think I actually work with a lot of applied ML for my day job in the tech industry, and it really intrigues me to make a project with AI that for us to consider instead of considering its users. So there's a lot to unpack here at the intersection of AI and climate change, but I think overall, right now we're developing all these algorithms at a time when surveillance capitalism is also taking off. So the parallel between the two, I think, made it very dangerous to have all these technologies that relies on this system of capitalism. And also a lot of like ML research are funded by, I guess, corporations that's striving for a certain goal, and it leaves very little time for nuanced research. And climate change is something that really craves nuances. Like the panels from yesterday really showed, we need like localized solutions with a lot of like community contributions. So in this case, I guess there's a danger of like magnifying our worst biases with ML in this field. But I do see that there may be a future where like AI can be applied to something very narrow that's a data processing job. But overall, I'm most interested in its ability to tell a story for us, to consider, for us to like understand a complex topic with through the eyes of an algorithm.
Matthew, do you have a point to make on that?
So the question is, how is it working with an AI as a creative? I feel like I have to maybe set up my response a little bit. I see it on a kind of continuum with working with software, which is a kind of virtualization of very often of former mechanical processes, right? So of producing images. So I was very affected by reading Willem Flusser's Towards a Philosophy of Photography, where he talks about the role or the agency left to the photographer in the end is just to press the shutter release. So the apparatus, the photographic apparatus, you could say, does most of the work. And so I feel always there is this maybe seduction, if you will, to let the AI do the work. And also we should clarify that the AI generally that we're talking about here is machine learning, I think, at least in the case of myself and Iris. But so as a creative, as an artist, I'm always looking for a kind of crack in the apparatus, so to speak, a place where I can reinsert agency and not sort of take as a given the decisions that are kind of coded in or baked in to the apparatus. So in that sense, it's a kind of let's say, accepting some parts, trying to actively deny and resist other parts, trying to not entirely be seduced by that kind of, especially in the case of AI, by that fecundity, by its ability to just generate images and generate images.
Mm-hmm. Okay. James, any idea?
Yeah, I mean, my experience of working with these systems is not dissimilar. And also, I think it's not dissimilar to the history of various art materials, because that's, I think what we're hearing in all of them is this kind of relationship between materiality and agency, in that like the biggest challenge when you start working with tech, which might just be defined in this case as stuff built by other people, is like how much you have to like tear it down and figure out how it works in order to like make it one's own and able to do anything with it. What some people sometimes describe as like the ability to mix one's own paint and therefore be able to kind of push it to its material possibilities and perhaps limits. But like what's really interesting about this work is like You do that first, and you find like the cool shit you could do with it because you've taken it apart and you put it back together, and then you start to think about the agency question, and like, because you've already dismantled one level of agency, you've kind of made it one's own, rather than being this thing that was just built by other people and encodes all their biases, even though it probably still does encode all their biases. And then you're like, oh, maybe it has its own agency still. Like, what is this kind of weird thing that I'm working with? And then you start, and again, because you know it so well, maybe you start to notice its own weird behaviors and the things that you haven't been able to take apart of it. It's like kind of deep materiality. All of with the proviso that, as Matthew says, this is not AI, this is machine learning and it's dumb as rocks. But rocks are quite smart, so so we have a long way to go. But like those kind of images and ideas of kind of material and agency, I just think loop over in this kind of work, in these kind of really beautiful and brilliant ways that we're always kind of prodding at. It remains endlessly fascinating, even if, yeah, sometimes I want to go back to the farm.
Great. I think I learned a lot with your 4 projects, and I feel that it somehow drives you already. I hope it will drive many others as well, many other humans. And maybe in 20 years we see if we will have the server farm growing somewhere. I'm really curious about that. Should exchange details to meet again, maybe in a setting in 20 years. I'm very glad to have this talk with you, and thank you so much for discussing, and I will ask you all for great applause. Thank you. For the 4 artists.
Everybody, that's what we had for you in terms of AI technology and maybe ecosystems of living. Thank you, Kay Meseberg, for hosting, and thank you guys for sharing the insights to your work. Another applause for them, please. But let's move on to the next project, the next proposal of today. Every one of us had this situation. You are on the internet, and the internet suggests you things that you should buy, that you don't want to buy, that you don't need to buy. And there's one project here that is called Dissuasion Engine by 3 people, Eric Ardigard, Alexander Akwasi, and Chris Salter, who have come up with something for us against this. I want to say welcome, Chris Salter. Chris, where are you? An applause.
Fire. In the Greek myth of Prometheus, the great god Zeus permitted the brothers Epimetheus and Prometheus to populate the earth with creatures and humans. Now, Epimetheus wasn't too smart, wasn't too bright, so when he was giving these qualities out, he foolishly gave all the good qualities to the creatures, and so when he finally came to humans, there was nothing left to give. So his brother Prometheus stole fire from the great god Zeus to give to humans, and therefore to make them superior to all creatures. In the Western classical tradition, Prometheus becomes a figure who represents human striving, desire, particularly the quest for scientific knowledge, and also the success of technology over nature, since fire is the first technology. But Prometheus also represents human overreaching and the risk of unintended consequences. This deep desire to fulfill our needs, wants, also leads to something else: destruction, excess, waste, sacrifice. It's what the French philosopher Georges Bataille called the accursed share. It's a kind of economics in which excess energy has to be spent in the system. And we engage with all sorts of things to do this. Sex without having children, the arts, we luxuriously buy things we don't need. And for instance, historically, the Aztecs, the Incans, the Mayas buried gold under the ground so no one could access it. Or we engage in crazy kind of frivolous things like investing and throwing money out the window, like investing in cryptocurrency or stocks. Now, these are the roots of what we call consumption. Indeed, consommer, the 12th century term consommer meant to destroy by fire. To use up things, wood, wheat, metal, that was what was consumption. To use things up, in other words, to destroy them. But between the 17th and the 20th century, something happened. The notion of consumption moved from destruction to creation. This new discipline of economics that emerged in the 18th century argued that consumption was not only good for the individual, it was good for the nation. But something else happened in the 20th century, something really new. It's what the economist Thorstein Veblen called conspicuous consumption. And he already said this in 1899. He said conspicuous consumption was basically making a purchase to make a statement about somebody's wealth or their class or their accomplishments. And suddenly, there was a huge range of new technologies and techniques to cement this phenomena: advertising, the proliferation of radio and then television, the shopping mall, the mail order catalog, the internet, the mobile phone, online commerce, and online shopping. And now we come to the next part of that evolution. Consumption is now being automated. It's being automated by sensors, by algorithms, by networks of computers, by interfaces, and also directly on your screen. Lurking behind every website you shop on, IKEA, Zalando, you name it, eBay and Amazon, are systems that automate your choices, your decisions, and even your desires. These are what we call recommendation engines. They recommend things for you. And their goal is to make you not only consume, but to consume a lot. And these recommendation engines are called, quote, revolutionary new tools that help guide our decision-making and processes. But they're revolutionary in another way. They are revolutionary because they automate your desire. They catch you in this strange feedback loop in which you buy more and more and more. And the consequences of this are dramatic. We are actually in a new consumption ecosystem, which we depend on every day, but the speed and the scale of it is beyond human history. 1.7 billion people, and that's us in this room, belong to the consumer or the affluent class. That is Germany, Switzerland, the US, Japan, Australia, all the industrialized countries of the world. And in fact, in this room probably, since many of you are German, Germans buy on average 60 things a year. 60 pieces of clothing, and throw away half of them. According to a 2020 Nature study called Scientists Warn on Affluence, they said, quote, excessive consumption worldwide is by far the strongest determinant of social and environmental impact and inequality. In other words, online mass consumption is shaped both by this new feedback loop between human desires and algorithmic technologies, and it comes with a massive social and environmental cost. And yet we still do it. We are caught. And why do we continue on this path? Externalities. Now, if you're not an economist, you might not know what this is. An externality describes the unintended and, most importantly, unpriced costs of our actions. In other words, the costs are external to my purchase. The producer of the good and you, the consumer, don't care because somebody else in some other place will pay for it. The costs not only accrue for humans, but also for ecosystems. If I'm not aware of the negative effects of what I do, I'm going to continue to do it over and over. So for instance, I want to buy my child a tricycle. I buy that tricycle, but I'm not aware that actually that might infect somebody in another country getting paid a non-living wage, basically polluting streams, causing more and more runoff, and basically generating more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But I'm not aware of those costs. They're not calculated, so I don't know about them. These unpriced costs also accrue to current workers and future generations. But what's also really important to understand is scale, and this is one of the issues around climate change. We don't understand scale. It's something which confronts us daily, and we do not understand it. We don't understand it temporally, and we don't understand it spatially. Scale affects the perception and impact of these externalities. The further away the effects are, to me, in time and space, the less likely I am to consider them important. So for instance, if I go and buy that Primark shirt over on Alexanderplatz for €5, it actually costs much more, but I don't think about it because the costs are further in the future. So we have what's called a wicked problem. It's a problem that has so many interdependent factors that it seems impossible to solve it. One, where it's difficult to consume less, which is what degrowth experts tell us, because it goes against human desire and also the growth model that's driving every current economy. And as many of you know in this room know, you didn't only elect the SPD and the Greens, you also elected the FDP. Second, human desire is also now being automated by these online technologies, such as recommender engines, that are designed to amplify and encourage these desires. Third, our decision to choose is automated. We will not just buy one thing, but we'll buy many, many things, and we have not necessarily the choice. And fourth, the true cost of these things that we consume, these externalities, is hidden from us, thus encouraging us to consume even more and more and more, and not even worry about the future. So what do we do? What would happen if every time you thought about pressing the buy button on your screen, you would think about how that decision would impact not only you, but the future of this planet? What kind of tools might you need to escape the grasp of these automated systems that produce this artificial need, desire, and waste? Well, it's something we call Dissuasion engine. Dissuasion engine is designed to disrupt the online shopping environment. It's a new kind of toolkit and a new kind of idea to get you to subvert the very technologies that are being used to generate these excessive online effects. And the goal of it is to disrupt things. It takes place in the same environment as which you shop, which is the online space, but it's designed to address the social and environmental costs of your action. It will take the form of a browser-based plugin, as well as potentially also a standalone mobile phone app in its first iterations. This is how a recommendation engine works. It analyzes your interactions. It analyzes your choices. It finds matches. It pushes similar products. It pushes complementary products. It pushes relevant ads. That's why that shoe there, many other shoes show up at the bottom, encouraging you to buy more and more of those shoes, even though maybe you only wanted to buy one. So the dissuasion engine does something else. It tries to feed you, you install it, it opens up a window next to your browser, and it starts to feed you information about what you're looking at anonymously. It's not tracking any data, but it's basically looking to see, okay, I'm looking at shoes, and it starts sending you data. It's connected to a database that feeds information related to specific shopping categories. So for instance, the life cycle of the product you're thinking of, the hidden costs, the externalities. So basically the recommender agents send you new information that are similar goods. This will send you similar costs of similar goods. So water, energy, labor, and so on. It also sends you similar costs of comparative products. It might even link you to social media, so you might share these things with your friends who might say, you know, don't buy that because, you know, it's just not well produced, it's not green, it's not, you know, you don't need it. It also might send you basically news. And this thing will scan the web, it will extract information, it will feed that into the database, and it will send you similar stories about similar goods. So for instance, you might be buying a pair of sneakers. Sneakers are the most water-intensive product you can buy on the planet, and it might send you new articles about that. And finally, it might send you voices in your head, statements that say things like, do you really need this? What about your neighbors have that product? Why would you need it? In fact, the CEO of North Face, one of the largest sports manufacturers in the world, actually put in his labels 3 years ago something that said, you don't really need to buy this jacket. So this is a kind of voice in your head that sends you information that maybe, just maybe, might cause you to pause from what you're actually going to buy. This is the way we think about this. This is actually an implementable system. It's not a fiction. It's not a speculation. And what are we doing? Well, right now, we have a little stand there in the other room. We're talking to people. We have a board. We're looking to see what information would you want. What do you want to know, not only to be a maybe more conscious consumer, but also maybe a consumer that doesn't want to consume. We're talking to different stakeholders. We have an informal user survey there, so you can also participate in that. We're gathering a lot of feedback. We've been talking to people coming from the political sector, from journalism, everyday people just like many of you, trying to see, is this interesting? Is this important? Do we actually how can we reduce this insane consumption? And finally, we're evaluating these elements. And this project will go on. It involves a lot of stakeholders. We've been talking to degrowth people and circular economy experts. We're trying to figure out how to design this database of costs, because this is very, very difficult. It's not simple. And as I said, the externalities aren't calculated, so how do you actually calculate them? There's lots of projects in Europe about true cost right now, about products. So we're trying to figure out how we might link to them. There is a software architecture, and again, this is very much based on users. So we're trying to figure out how to test this with different user groups, with the partners in Driving the Human, who are coming from design, who are coming from circular economy, coming from technological development consulting, and so on here and also internationally. Thank you.
Wow. And is my mic on? Yes? Great.
Eric Adegaard is coming on stage, and also
Hello,
Alexander Cassie, who's broadcasting in from Montreal. There he is.
There we are with that. Thank you so much. Now, I want to ask you just quickly before we move on, what have you learned the last 2 days? You said you've been talking to stakeholders, people coming from all different multidisciplinary areas. What's the analogies you've got right now?
Well, people are reacting very strongly. I'm kind of surprised, actually, and we can see that we touched a nerve. Everybody, anyway, he's sort of a victim in a way in this environment, shopping environment. A lot of people are feeling alienated, and we sense that we're at the sort of a moment of questioning what we have developed here. I mean, this is a human problem in a way. It's not just because a lot of people here are actually creators, and they are not far away from the creation of this environment, of these interfaces. A lot of us are designers and engineers. They are also developers. I mean, and also innovators. And so this is something that has been imagined by humans, and now is being taken over by machines. And we all feel it. We feel that something is happening behind our back. And what we all did, like happily and creatively and having a lot of fun doing, suddenly we think something else is beginning to emerge out of it. Time to wake up and reclaim our agencies.
Alex?
Yes, combining AI and capitalism is dangerous, as we discussed earlier, and AI can have an agency. And so what is it wise for it to do? We have kind of power to create tools that can change the world, and that's what we're thinking about now.
And the impetus for this project is essentially as a kind of unsettling thought. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the impetus was actually reading this article in Nature, and it's the first time that scientists have said the term affluence. Normally it's like, oh, we consume, but it's us. You know, it's not, and someone asked us earlier yesterday, they said, yeah, but you know, the people who would download this thing, they already know. And I said, actually no, because we all participate in this model, in this ecology, in this economy. We're not outside of it. We are all consumers, and we're also increasingly excess consumers, you know, think about how many pairs of shoes you bought. Think about how many flights you've taken. You know, and these are things that basically are pushing the planet to the edge because there are finite resources and there is infinite energy, as people think, in these systems. And so we have to get rid of that in some way.
Yeah, I would also add that I think we're also consuming screen time. And that's another aspect that eventually in the conversation that so in a way we're doing theater with Dissuasion engine. And what's going to be happening with these different voices, some of them are going to be coming from us, some of them are going to be coming from algorithms, from crawlers. One of the big questions is going to be what's going on with the technology itself, actually. It's a consumption, in a way, it's shifting from buying things and now to buy like bits, in a way.
And we are actually using those tools to actually critique them. So it's what Phil Agri called critical technical practice. We don't ignore them. We don't ignore that we're in a technological society. We all are living in that space. But in order to use those tools, we have to critique them. And we actually engineer them or re-engineer them in a way that actually puts the critique in the actual mechanism itself and not just outside of it. So that's why we actually use the very tools that we're trying to critique.
Fantastic.
You want to use the same strategies than the social networks use with like dopamine rush before you click the buy button. But then before clicking that button, you can think twice. And is it right? Is it the right thing to do? What are the side effects of doing it?
And what we're really trying to do is use this technology to spark a debate. This is what these Nature researchers said at the end of that article. They said there are 3 sectors of society that have to deal with the question of overconsumption or affluence. One is the political sector, the second is the corporate sector, and the third is us, public stakeholders. And what they said is just to begin a discussion about something that no government and no corporation wants to talk about is the beginning.
Well, that discussion starts here. Potentially. I mean, one of my exercises will be to try to dissuade the dissuasion engine, you know, that kind of back and forth. We should all try that. Now, we have to move on, unfortunately, so I'm going to, fortunately, invite Anton Rahlwes to the stage. Thank you so much. Anton, Editor-in-Chief of Form. I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce who you're speaking to.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I have the pleasure to host the next round table in this not-so-round Driving the Human Pool, and it's called Rethinking Value and Production, and I'm happy to invite to the stage 3 artists and architects. It's DK, Andrea, and who is, sorry? Vienna. Thank you. Hello, hello, hello. Have a seat. So, we heard a lot about production and how it is working in the internet. Maybe we start with you, Andrea. Can you maybe tell us a bit more about your project? There will be a film shown in the background, and you tell us something about your project, which is called Superlocal, which is quite self-explaining maybe, but tell us some things about it.
Yeah, good evening. Is it okay?
The microphone is not working.
Hello? Hello? Yeah, it works. Hello, everybody. Good evening. I'm Andrea de Chirico, and I'm very happy today to present my project, which is called Superlocal Zero Mice Production. This project like this? Yeah. This project started back in 2015, as a thesis project, and it's actually a global system to question and to explore the possibility of producing daily life objects locally. So what we do is go into specific neighborhood, like in the video that we are watching now, in the west part of London, and through the experience of making these objects, we get to know specific contexts. Like in this case, for example, we were making a stool that was made with some wood that was found in some building site in the neighborhood, and then there was the seat was upholstered with linen, and then here we see the people basically seeing the CNC milling machine cutting out the wood. And then we went to Kindred Studio, which is a really nice co-working space for artists, designers, where we did this workshop about upholstery. So our idea is that getting to know the story of the objects.
Could you switch the microphone?
Switch. So the.
Perfect.
It was good. I mean, just. Yeah. Hello. Yeah, it works. Yeah, so our idea is basically that knowing the story of our objects and its production story changes our perception of them and our awareness about the objects that we use daily, so the objects that basically are surrounding us during our lives. I really much see basically this system where the objects are part of a constellation of elements where basically they are seen as kind of portals or doors to many kinds of knowledge related to materials, to manufacturing techniques, to places and people. So they are meant to be a sort of inspirational tool to then eventually further explore certain certain objects and manufacturing and places and districts.
And you're like working on it for quite a time now, right?
Yeah, basically the project started in 2015, so now it has been 6 years, and we developed 17 different objects in 6 different locations in Europe. And here at Driving the Human, we are presenting the version 2 of the system that includes the first physical hub of the network, which would basically coordinate the production activities around the district, combining digital manufacturing and traditional manufacturing, as we believe that by the combination of the two, they can strengthen each other. And they will coordinate also the activities around the objects. So it's also really much about education, this project.
Mm-hmm. And I was a bit wondering, or maybe quite naively asking myself, but we still need to produce things, right? So at least in this scenario.
Yeah, that's a nice question. Basically, every object is entering some material flows and material cycles. So we always include second-hand materials in our production, but we combine them with a variety of them so that we use recycled material where it makes sense, let's say. So we really dive into each specific case, and we combine new and old materials based on the need and on the kind of characteristics we want to have on the object. Do we need to produce more things? Probably, I mean, we still need like a chair to sit. That's something we will always need. So it's like, yeah, then we could start a conversation about what do we need. That's actually would be a very nice conversation. Maybe there is no time today.
Keep this for later, yeah, maybe.
Sorry?
Keep this question for later, maybe, what we need. But go on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so basically, I'm done.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was also wondering, like, where does local stop or begin? So what is local in this world? What is your definition, maybe?
Yeah, this is a word that, honestly, when I started the project was not as trendy as it is today, so we can hear it constantly. Yeah, it's not always something that starts from a... I mean, there is a lot of greenwashing going around, so I mean, local is something that is not always preferable to something that is not local. Sometimes, actually, it makes more sense to have something that is made not locally. That someone, I remember there was a study of kiwi plantations, and it would make more sense to grow them in Australia and ship them to England than actually recreate the condition for them to grow in England. So it's something we should, I always try to avoid, let's say, this binary thinking of good or bad, because it really depends on the specific case. We had also some cases also in Italy. It was really interesting of some strawberries that were sold as really local food that was grown very close to Milan. There was some newspapers that actually the workers were really not paid enough and treated really not with fair wages, but it was still a local product. So there are many questions. We live in as we were speaking before, in a very complex world, and I think we should try to get as deep as possible into each specific situation and context, and we try to do so in the physical world, into neighborhoods, and mainly speaking about urban context, because that's the main context for humans that will be always more the places where we're going to live in the future. So, yeah, I hope I answered.
And you mentioned the model of the first hub, which is over there, like in the beehive, also can be seen here at Radialsystem. And there's also another installation of yours here at Radialsystem. Do you maybe want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so here, basically, in the beehive, the next room, we can see a scale model of this production hub that is a space that don't actually exist, but it's something like a projection of. It doesn't exist yet. Yeah, yeah, it will exist in the future. It's actually a projection of how, which kind of things a space like that would need. And I found really important to have a physical representation of this space, also to show the feasibility of it, so that people could really experience it in a scale such as the 1:25, so that you can really dive into the space with even looking at the furniture that is inside. The model was made also by a really great model maker. It's called Stefano Carrari, and is based in Turin. So basically the model itself is following the same logic of the project, while at the second floor we experience actually is as if entering the model, we basically jump into the silk screen part. So there is, as if you look at the model, there is a space that is dedicated to silk screen, which is a technique to print in an analog way, very nice technique because you can print on basically anything. And it would be the technique that we're going to use to communicate our activities to the public. And in this second floor, we're organizing silk screen workshop to make people experience this technique, as we believe that like putting your hands on materials and make your hand dirty gives you a nicer perspective on craftsmanship and more of an inner insight in the topic.
One more question. When we talked before, you said you don't want that craftsmanship should be like romanticized. Why don't you want that, or what are your worries about that?
Yeah, so basically I always say that we try to find a sort of middle point between craft nostalgia and technological proudness. So craft nostalgia is something that basically is a bit romanticizing the notion of craftsmanship, in the sense of having this kind of old generation in these dusty workshops, not having anyone of the younger generations wanting to take this heritage and continue this activity, while digital proudness is something that I would relate more to the, let's say, the maker movement or the Fab Lab network. Of course, I'm simplifying it now. It would need more time to get more, because it's much more complex than now as I'm explaining it. but that's something that is really much related to the technology that is used to make things, while the things that are made are often made to show the potential of such technology without really trying to find a way to combine this technology to others that even like traditional ones that could actually open up new possibilities. So we are really much looking for variety in the materials and production modes, because I think that through variety, also as we experience in this exhibition where there is a great variety of people from all over the world, is where I think sustainability, as if this word could actually have a meaning, lies. Yeah.
And I mean, the future of this project is maybe the next step is to create one of these hubs. But if you like take a view into the more far future, what would your vision be for this project?
Yeah, so basically something I didn't mention is that this production hub is meant to be a scalable model that could be applied anywhere. So also in the way the architecture is designed, as the first one will be based in Turin, is inspired by the characteristic of the city itself. And the urbanism of Turin has really much has to do with 90 degrees corners, speaking about the central historical part. So that's why also the architecture is kind of squared. But at the same time, it leaves a lot of room to be then adapted to each specific context. So the vision would be to have many of these physical hubs that are sharing knowledge around production, but dealing with something that is around them. So basically, you make the knowledge of production go around, but materials and technologies are just at your doorstep. It's a bit like libraries. That's a bit the idea, no? So that if you need a book into a library, then you can ask this service to bring it to between libraries. At least in Italy, I'm sure also in Germany it's like that. So to create a network that is in direct contact with the production and the craftsmanship and the materials of the city. It's a kind of mediator between the citizens and the production scene. Production in a broad sense. So I'm not just speaking about factories, but I'm speaking about associations, cooperatives, and material flows in general, and recycling loops. Yeah.
And where's the limit of complexity in this project or in the products which could be produced there? Do you see like a clear like border and say it can't be more complicated than, for example, a chair or something? Or is it also a question of perspective and?
Maybe I don't understand so well the question.
What is produced in these hubs needs to be quite like low, not too complicated to produce. Where do you see the limits of what products you can produce there? For example, of course, you can't produce a smartphone there, like in the beginning, but where should that go?
Yeah, that's actually, it's really like complexity. It's really, this project is really about also limitations, because if you deal with proximity, you are limited to the things you have around you. So, of course, for example, we use daily many objects that have a complexity which is so great that we couldn't really build them locally, such as smartphones or laptops or many things that have so many different components that basically are made in China and not in so many other places in the world. But I think, like, also here, what I'm looking for is really to have a variety, like also like a constellation of objects where you combine more technological objects to more local produced ones, because we don't really believe that we try to avoid binary thinking in the sense that we don't think that an object that is made locally is forcefully something better than something that's not made locally, but it's through the combination of them. Yeah, a bit like the previous project. So there are some things that you need to buy on Amazon because there is no other way to get them, also if you're in a lockdown, for example, or in a specific context. But some other object just you can make also in this way. So we're speaking about low-tech objects mainly, furniture, also for security reasons, certifications, all these bureaucratic things. And also small electric appliances. So we made some dryers, Bluetooth speakers, so some objects that have some kind of technology, but which stays quite simple.
Okay, thank you very much. So maybe we're going on to the next project, which is Habitat. And yeah, sorry for my little blackout in the beginning, but we have another digital guest as well, Yasmin. And yeah, do you maybe want? No, we're watching a movie before, and afterwards we're talking about that. Yes. Okay.
Until today, nomadic women, they weave their clothing and even their habitat using pieces of wood and looms, and this piece was also a way of thinking about the relationship we have with our buildings. I really would love to have people weave the piece in situ to remind them about the power of, relating to the environment that you're creating. And the Fufuzela skin is really just a framework to think about that.
The Fufuzela is an open design, deployable and low-cost bamboo architecture that reformats spaces of learning and making for bio-digital African futures. It is designed and made in conversation with a network of makers. Its scalar geometry is based on the closest packing of sphere. So the structure of the Fufuzela affords the overlay of patterns of threads spread at regular interval, akin to the warp of a loom, and together they create a dimensional color effect and reminds us of the vibrant Ghanaian kente cloth. What if communities around the world could customize the skin and weave on or through the structure their own motifs and symbols like tattoos on one's flesh? The current version of the Fufuzela skin, hereby presented, uses thin sheets of reflective and lightweight materials. We chose aluminum, through which material can be collectively woven to create a three-dimensional envelope. The piece is foldable and vibrates as you interact with it like a living creature. And the relationship with the Fufuzela is that, it's geometry in terms of geometry, but also in terms of effect.
Thank you. I think Yasmin is going to share a few quick comments also from the other side of the ocean.
All right. Thank you, DK. I wanted to present myself. I'm a faculty at the Pennsylvania State University in the architecture department, and I call myself a neo-nomad. I'm very much interested in the cultural attachment to place and how that operates, how we get entangled to places, the thread one weaves within the environment they inhabit. It's stories about emplacement, not displacement. And so working on the piece, the prototypes wants to invite you, people, to weave through the skin structures of the Fufuzela. The Fufuzela is an open source project, is the framework that we're using to invite you to think through making about the relationship to the space we inhabit. It's really a plea for spatial engagement at the time of displacement, at the time where robots and everything is done, are given prominence, everything is done for us. Humans are relinquishing the effort and satisfaction, sometimes pleasure, of making and building yourself and themselves. So to me, these emotions, the relationship we create with space, are extremely important to make sense of the world around us. And so we believe, and I believe, that an open source architecture framework enables the stories to be embedded into the environment and to relate to the place we're in.
Super, and maybe I'll just add, is this back? It's back on. Just a couple quick comments that, I mean, so also as a way, we're mentioning this word Fuvuzela, and I should just also mention that this is another kind of anticipatory design project which we have been working on for a number of years, which is trying to understand a future wherein architecture is alive and mobile. So upstairs you'll see, and I want to encourage all of you to sort of pass by if you haven't already, and weave some piece of yourself into the structure yourself, but we see this Fuvuzela as actually a very early sort of evolutionary stage of these kinds of organisms that will exist in the future, which can, in a way, offer us opportunities to inhabit them, but in some way through negotiation. And it's a project that we've been developing, as Yasmin mentioned, with a whole bunch of, especially youth in Ghana. I'm Ghana American, so kind of a hybrid between my mother from sort of Scot-Irish Norwegian descent and my father from Ghana, just as Yasmin is also a kind of a cultural hybrid between Alsace and Syria. And one of the images I find really striking is there's a sort of photograph of her grandfather in Syria, where on their family land, he would allow nomads to camp on the land at certain times of year when they were passing through, even though they didn't obviously own that land. And this kind of awareness or understanding of mobility, of being able to sort of live in multiple places and spaces within the world in a very fluid way, and also to understand that architecture need not be fixed in place, is something that we are sort of losing touch with sometimes in the contemporary moment. And Fuvuzela is a kind of invitation to somehow rediscover that. When we ask the question of how can we co-create the future, it's a very difficult question, because if we think about radically open and unbounded possibility spaces, how do you design for them? So often design is oriented around function, but through a lot of the work we've done with really working now with thousands of young people in West Africa, also some coming from Europe as well as the United States, we realize increasingly that you need to have an open framework that can somehow present itself as a scaffolding within which you can innovate. And this is what we see the Fuvuzela, and when we say biodigital futures, as you've seen already today, it's very clear now with our scientific understanding that there's really no distinction between any of these scientific disciplines, that physics and biology and chemistry are all the same, and reality is quantum. And this is something now that I think in the West is being rediscovered, but in Ghana, as in much of Africa, we really have not forgotten since thousands of years that our reality is actually a projection of higher dimensional spaces. And we have to sort of understand this kind of entanglement with our environment through kind of co-production with the rest of our world and our environment.
I have one question just for like clarification. There's like this title of habitat and the Fuvuzela. What is the difference, or what is it exactly?
I'll try and explain it, because it's two things. So again, the Fuvuzela is this sort of for this sort of festival, we really focused on, let me say, the skin. So we see the Fuvuzela as an organism made up of bones and skin. And the bones and the skins are different at different stages and at different times and in different versions of itself. But typically the bones are made out of bamboo. Upstairs, this is the version 2.0 of the open source design. So it's actually CNC cut out of bamboo plywood. But the skin, which is this kinetic piece that was in the video that sort of installs within the structure, is what we're calling habitat. And the experience of the sort of light effects and the atmospherics within that is a sort of site-specific installation, which we're calling habitat, as also a kind of, these words are all blurry. Habit, habitat, inhabitation. How do we sort of distinguish between a sort of exoskeleton for our human bodies and sort of structures that form enclosure and environment?
Yeah, it's interesting because you have like this big prototype upstairs, and still it's so abstract, this project, to really get into it. But I understand that it's kind of about the idea of living and how we want to live and how we also interact with architecture. Is that right?
I think so. I mean, again, I made the comment that we oftentimes think of buildings as something that are fixed in place. I mean, I've walked around Berlin a little bit, and it's so beautiful, and you see a lot of these very large buildings that are very heavy, but you also see, even across the river, I see some tents on the side, right? So there are people living in two different worlds, even within Berlin. And I think, particularly because this is a project coming out of, on some level, an African context, but understood in a global sort of world, we recognize that the future is only more and more and more about mobility. And essentially, virtually all of our sort of spaces are going to become more and more sort of virtual, if you will, or more lightweight. And so the reason why the structure upstairs is sort of dynamic is because it's part of that process. And we really do sort of see this evolving into living, breathing, metabolizing structures that can also move around the same spaces that we inhabit.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yasmin, do you want to add something? We have a little bit of time pressure, but anyways.
No, I think that was perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Some applause for this project. So we will move on to the next project, and to Vienne, which is called Down to the Economy. Please tell us a bit more about your project.
So basically, I've had the pleasure of speaking with people with Down syndrome over the summer about socioeconomic questions. It started mostly, to be honest, I had very little experience with people with Down syndrome, but a lot of my work is about economics. So the previous panel talked about how technology needs to be taken apart before you can reshape it into doing something good. So that's how I think about economics and economic policies. And then one day I was just thinking, well, actually, yes, we need stuff, we need products, and we need stuff in our lives, but a lot of what is really important to us is our relationships with other people and the care we receive from each other. And then I thought, well, who is really good at caring about other people? And then I was just like, I don't know, I think, people with Down syndrome are supposed to be really good at it. And a friend of mine, her brother has Down syndrome, so I had a really brief but interesting and good experience. I was like, okay, so why don't we try this? And so I see them as the experts at being able to care for other people. So that's how it started.
And how is it going? You said there's like this interview, a kind of research phase, but there's also kind of an outcome where you like play through certain scenarios.
Mm-hmm. What we've been doing is, I've been going to Hamburg and I've been interviewing, long interviews, long conversations we've been having. And we ask the person questions such as, we have refugees who don't have homes, what can we do? We have a housing shortage, we have very high rental prices. How would, if you had a lot of money, if you were the government and money was not a problem, what would you do? So all the questions are based on the premise that money is not a problem, and what would you do? And we also ask them really difficult questions that a lot of politicians can't answer. How would you deal with the aging population in Europe, for example? So it's been a really interesting experience. I can talk, there are many, many different things I could talk about here, so do cut me off when I...
Somebody will cut us off.
Okay, good, good. But I think the first few interviews for me was really an experience that put me back. Because one person we interviewed, so we were packing up, and he was quite shy and held back and not confident throughout. And then I was just kind of getting to know him, and I was like, so what do you think is the most important thing in life? And he said, to not have Down syndrome. I've been thinking about what is it about our society that has created this kind of structure. Because people with Down syndrome actually get all the things they have provided for, all the things they need are provided for, but they're also keenly aware of the fact that they are not free. They're not allowed. They receive money, they receive social forms of welfare, but what is actually left gives them very little space to actually participate in society, because participation in society actually requires money to various extents, right? So in a way, they've also been very segregated that way, and also in terms of their work, not just people with Down syndrome, but people with disabilities work in workshops for the disabled. And it's been legal to pay them below minimum wage. And I believe there's now, at least in Germany, a move away from that. But it's not just about money. It's also about the segregation of interactions between people. Because the interactions between people are also part of what allows us to imagine something else. And I think what is important about this is, at least previously, in Germany as well as in other countries, a lot of the justification for paying people below minimum wage was that they didn't have a minimum level of performance or minimum level of achievement. But when we think about it, what is it about what most people in society that we are doing that, what are we really contributing, really? Marketing, selling stuff, is that really so much better or so much more important? So these are some of the questions we've been dealing with. And so we've been thinking a lot about work and what it means and so on.
And maybe you're also the best person to lead over to the next step in this live stream. Maybe you can tell us about the performance which will take place after this round table.
So some of the questions we've been asking, as I mentioned, include the old age question, and that Europe has an aging population, and a lot of people don't know what we're going to do. We had some very interesting responses from two ladies with Down syndrome, and they will present it in a short piece that we've been working on together.
So how much time do we have left? We're done.
Okay.
So we're looking forward for this performance.
Felina are ministers at Down City. Katja is a minister from another country visiting Down City to learn from them.
Willkommen in Down City. Sie müssen mit uns mit einer sprechen. Gesellschaft sprechen. Down City hat eine bessere Gesellschaft gebaut. Bitte nehmen Sie Platz. Wie können Ihnen helfen?
Welcome to Down City. We hear you want to consult with us about how to form a better society. Please have a seat. How can we help you today?
Nun, wir haben eine Menge Probleme dort, wo ich herkomme. Während die allgemeinen Zahlen der Wirtschaft auf dem Papier gut aussehen, gibt es bei uns viele unzufriedene Leute und es gibt politische Unruhen. Wir haben gehört, dass Sie seit der Gründung von Down City im Jahre 2022 eine florierende Wirtschaft aufgebaut haben und eine glückliche Gesellschaft. Deswegen bin ich heute hier, um von Ihnen zu lernen.
Well, we have a lot of problems. While our general economic numbers look good on paper, many people in our country are unhappy, and there is a lot of political unrest. And we heard that since you established Down City in 2022, you have built an economy that is flourishing and a society that is happy. So I've come to learn from you today.
Können Sie von eigenen Problemen erzählen, mit denen konfrontiert sind?
Can you tell us about some of the problems you're facing?
Ja, wir haben zum Beispiel eine Menge Leute, die bald alt werden und keine Kinder haben, die sich um sie kümmern.
Well, we have a lot of old people, and they don't have children to take care of them.
Oh, Sie brauchen mehr Pflegeheime und Mitarbeiter. Sie müssen provisionell sein. Wir haben große Geschäfte gekauft. Karlstadt ist pleite gegangen. Wir haben dort ein Pflegeheim gebaut. Außerdem stehen Wohnheime und Wohnungen für Geringverdiener und Flüchtlinge.
Oh, you need more care homes and more workers. You need to be professional about this. What we did is that we bought big retail spaces like Karstadt that were going bankrupt and converted them into care homes, as well as into student housing and housing for low-income people and refugees.
Auch für Studenten und für Menschen mit geringem Einkommen und für Flüchtlinge. Warum?
Also for students and for people with low income and refugees. Why?
Weil wir allen helfen wollen. Das ist doch ganz einfach.
Because we want to help everyone. It's quite simple, actually.
Ja, die Studierenden werden mit weniger Schulden abschließen und diejenigen aus ärmeren Familien geraten nicht finanziell unter Druck. So bekommen sie Chancengleichheit. Das verstehe ich. Und sie haben die Gebäude gekauft, um die Kontrolle über den Betrieb der Pflegeheime zu behalten.
So the students will graduate with less debt and those from poor families won't be held back. I see. And you bought the building to retain control over how the care homes are run.
Genau das kostet am Anfang etwas Geld. Aber es hat großes wirtschaftliche Vorteile in der Zukunft.
Exactly. It costs some money in the beginning, but it has enormous economic benefits in the long run.
Also die Menschen arbeiten noch, aber machen sich das Leben leicht.
People still work when you make life so easy?
Ja, Menschen arbeiten gerne hier, weil uns wichtig ist, dass wir Spaß der Arbeit haben, bei uns Spaß haben. Tatsächlich eine Leistung.
Yes, people like working here because one of our metrics is having a good time at work. Having fun is a work performance criteria in Down City.
Ich denke, dass wir nur sicherstellen müssten, dass alle genug haben. Aber wir haben ganz viele Menschen, die eben keine gute Zeit haben, irgendwie Spaß haben, weil sie eben nicht genug Geld verdienen.
I guess it's okay when we just somehow have enough for everyone, but we also have a lot of people who are not having a good time because they just aren't making enough money.
Dann bezahlt sie besser.
So pay them better.
Aber wir haben viele ungelernte Leute, Leute ohne technische Fähigkeiten und die können vielleicht Dinge machen wie Reinigung, Putzen. Sie haben nicht wirklich was beizutragen.
But we have a lot of unskilled people. They don't really have any technical skills. They can't really do anything except for cleaning. They don't really have anything to contribute.
Nein, Sie liegen falsch. Wir haben alle etwas beizutragen. Wir wollen alle etwas beitragen.
No, you're wrong. We all have something to contribute and we want to contribute.
Damit haben wir tatsächlich viel Erfahrung. Sehen Sie, vor Down City hatte ich einen Job als Putzfrau. Putzen ist ein wichtiger Job. Ich arbeite immer noch als Reinigungskraft, obwohl ich jetzt Ministerin bin.
We actually have a lot of experience with that. You see, before Down City, I was working as a cleaner, and cleaning is an essential job. I still work as a cleaner, even though I'm a minister now.
Was? Sie sind Ministerin und arbeiten als Reinigungskraft?
What? You're a minister and you work as a cleaner?
Ja, ich mag das. Meine Kollegen muntern mich auf, wenn ich schlecht gelaunt bin. Ich versuche, dasselbe für sie zu tun. Nicht nur die Reinigung ist wichtig, es ist auch ein sehr wertvoller Beitrag für die Gesellschaft, sich gegenseitig zu helfen, sich besser zu fühlen. Dies ist das Wesentliche der Arbeit in Down City.
Yes, I like it. My colleagues cheer me up when I'm in a bad mood, and I try to do the same for them. Not only is cleaning important, but helping each other feel better is a very valuable contribution to society. This is an essential element of work at Down City.
Ich nehme an, wenn man die Interaktionen bei der Arbeit als wirtschaftlichen Beitrag anerkennt, dann erkennt man auch, dass sie ein Teil der gesellschaftlichen Entwicklung sind. Ich beginne allmählich zu verstehen, warum Sie in Down City eine glücklichere Gemeinschaft haben, die viel mehr zusammenhält als dort, wo ich herkomme.
I guess when you count the work interactions as an economic contribution, then it also becomes part of society's development. I'm starting to understand why Down City is a much more cohesive community and a happier place than where I come from.
Genau.
Exactly.
Und ich denke, dass Sie als Reinigungskraft arbeiten, hilft Ihnen auch eine bessere Ministerin zu sein, weil Sie verstehen, was im Leben der Menschen vor sich geht. Wie ist das mit freiwilligen Arbeit bei Ihnen?
I guess working as a cleaner helps you be a better minister because you understand what is going on in people's lives. But is this like volunteering?
Ach nein, es ist ein wichtiger Job. Ich habe alle Rechte und Pflichten wie die anderen. Tatsächlich haben wir keine Freiwilligen in Down City oder Praktikanten oder Werkstätten. für Behinderte. Wenn sie arbeiten, sind sie ein Arbeiter. Das war's. Wir nehmen alles, was wir tun, sehr ernst. Und jeder wird angemessen bezahlt.
Oh no, it's a real job, and I have all the rights and responsibilities just as all the others. In fact, we don't have volunteers in Down City, or interns, or workshops for the disabled. If you work, you're a worker, and that's it. We take everything we do very seriously, and everyone is paid properly.
Aber was ist mit den Leuten, die eben nicht genug abliefern, um ihren Beitrag zu leisten?
But what if some people just aren't performing enough to contribute?
Bei euch gibt es viele Leute, die ihre Jobs nicht lieben. Sie verkaufen Dinge, die die Leute nicht brauchen. Manchmal kann ihre Arbeit sogar der Umwelt schaden. Warum sehen sie das als Leistung? Aber nicht jemanden, der anderen hilft, sich gut zu fühlen.
You have many people working in jobs they don't love, selling things to people they don't need. Sometimes their work can even harm the environment. Why do you think of that as performance, but not someone who's helping others feel good?
Wenn Menschen sich glücklich fühlen, können sie mehr beitragen, als auf eine Weise bei ihnen nicht berücksichtigt wird.
When people feel happy, they can contribute more, in a way that currently you don't know how to count.
Wie kommt das jetzt alles zusammen?
But how does that all come together?
Sie machen sich Sorgen über die technischen Details. Wir finden, wir für Wichtigkeiten. Dann unsere Technikerlösung. Vienne ist eine Technikerin, sie sagt, wie das geht.
You're worried about the technicalities. The way we work is that we first find the values we feel are important, and then we find one of our technicians to put it all together. Here, Vienne, one of our technicians, will show you how it works.
Wir wollen zurück an die Arbeit. Wenn Ihnen noch Fragen einfallen, fragen Sie uns. Viel Glück.
We need to go back to work now. If you have some more questions later, just ask us. Good luck.
Ich wünsche Ihnen alles Gute für die Zukunft.
I wish you all the best for the future.
Dankeschön.
Exactly. Is my microphone on? Sorry. Exactly. Why don't we do jobs that make people feel good? What a program, ladies and gentlemen.
What a program. The good news is...
There's more.
There's more. There's more tonight, there's more tomorrow, but I think we need to take a moment and just, I don't know, summarize a little bit what we've had this evening,
What did we see?
ending with you. Are you on?
I don't know, I feel like I'm not. but
You're on.
I'm on.
We're both on. I mean, if I would summarize, I'll begin. I'd say that I'm quite moved by the general territory that we've moved through, right? Tonight, from these kind of grand scale computational questions, somehow a little bit difficult to grasp, and ending here tonight with something that I think is perhaps one of the most radical proposals of the entire project. That is, I mean, that's quite a journey. It's quite meaningful. I'm a little bit moved, actually.
Ich sage das jetzt einmal auf Deutsch, damit ihr auch das versteht. Oh my God, I'm so touched. I even forget what you said, James, but was er einfach gesagt hat, wir sind von der Technologie, Dingen, die wir vielleicht noch nicht ganz verstehen, die einfach da sind, in ein Thema gegangen, wo es um Menschlichkeit geht. Und diese Menschlichkeit habt ihr heute für uns vermittelt. Und dafür sind wir sehr dankbar.
Okay, we have to wrap this up.
We have to wrap up. But for those of you who are at home, we're going to see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. For those who are here tonight, we have so much more to offer to you. We have, straight after this, we have Habitat Theatre, how to transform a territory into a stage. At 9 p.m., we have a conversation with Dances, Politics, Soft Agency, and Sonic Acts of Nothing. And between 10 and 11 p.m., we still continue with screenings and performances.
Exactly. There's a lot going on. As I've said before, I'll say it again, in every nook and crevice of this massive building. For those of you who are here, we invite you to come down to the stage and ask any questions to Mila and Felina and Vienne and the whole team here. And to everybody at home, goodbye. We see you tomorrow at
5 p.m.
Bye-bye.
Applaus.